While I worked for others, I never felt I was being paid what I was worth. I wanted to work for myself, but I didn't know where to start or how to transition from employee to an entrepreneur. This podcast is about giving you the courage to take action, to stop trading your time for money, trading your life for a job that doesn't fulfill you or pay you what you're worth. This podcast is about giving you the tools and courage to work for yourself. Hi, I'm Phil Delozano, an entrepreneur and success coach, and I'm paying it forward by helping others like yourself go from employee to entrepreneur. Anyone starting a business needs a mentor, a coach to navigate to success, someone to push you, mentor you, coach you, and give you the pep talks to get you going. This is your wake-up call. Time to be your own boss. Hey, good morning. You're going to love today's show. Today we're featuring Miss Sydney Wong, and Miss Sydney has a company that helps entrepreneurs with securing funding with different investors and the venture capitalists. But before I share more, just wanted to give a listen.
Well, good morning, folks. We're back at the show, and today we've got a special guest. We're inviting Miss Sydney Wong. And
hi, everyone.
Hello there. She helps entrepreneurs with funding. So instead of me telling you about it, let her tell you about it. So if you don't mind, Sydney, if you can introduce yourself and maybe share with the audience what you do and what you offer and a little bit about you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for having me. So a few years ago, that's when my story started, and how we started VenturX is that I was working in marketing automation, and I had a friend from San Francisco who said if I was very interested in learning more about tech and startup, and I was very serious about it, I got to move to San Francisco, got to move to the Valley. So from Canada, where I am right now and where I'm originally from, I bought a one-way ticket within 10 days of him saying that. And I flew to San Francisco and I moved in with him. And I had no visa. I still don't have a visa. And from there, I was talking to every Uber driver, every TaskRabbiter, and every host on Airbnb. And I was just asking them so many questions here and there. And it was just really interesting to see that they all had a purpose of doing what they're doing. And they all had a road to success and to startup and everything. And I thought that was so great. So I wanted to bring that kind of structure to everyone else in the world, make it more available and more accessible. I started to learn that the industry of startup is like a battlefield with very few winners. So I asked myself, what would it take to make more winners? And that's how VenturX was born.
Interesting. So could you tell us a little bit more about VenturX? What is it that it does for entrepreneurs?
So what it does is that it does a couple of things. It's a platform that tracks your business metrics, and it shows you exactly where you're at in the funding cycle. So if you are going after funding for seed or Series A or whichever round you're going after, it compares you to other people in that industry. So when you pitch, you already know what you're good at and what you're not good at, because this will show you in comparison to where others are, and it will give you that kind of very realistic picture of what the other investors have seen so far. So you can adjust to the way that it works, and you can also see where you are doing best and where you need to improve. So that's one thing. The other thing it does is that it connects and matches you with the right investors. So right now, what people are doing is that they are sending out, kind of like hunting for jobs when you first get out of college or something. Mm-hmm. You send it out to everyone, even things you do not qualify for at all. So there are some investors that get over 100 applications a month, and going through applications isn't even their full-time job. You see what I mean?
Right.
So in order to have the best matches, you needed to make sure that you understand what the criteria is, where you stand, and then how to best approach that. So we do all of those things, and we also have customized services on a consulting basis to help them further along.
So if an entrepreneur has a product and they're ready to take it to market, but they just don't know how, and they're ready for funding and things like that, are those the people that contact you?
Yes, and we do specialize in the software space because we mainly have hundreds of investors and the seed and Series A round, but in the software space.
Okay.
So that is the right stage to contact us when they're starting to gain traction, they're starting to look for funding, and they want to go to that next level.
So you mentioned that you moved from Canada to San Francisco. Are you still in San Francisco, or did you move back to Canada?
I moved back to Canada because I had visa issues, and also it was really hard to find a place to live. Who knew? So I had a really hard time with getting an American credit report, visa problems, every single tourist problem that you could have. And eventually I moved back here. And so I was working remotely at that time, and I was partway being interviewed by Tesla until I could not pass the visa test.
Oh my God.
Then I moved back here. And I started to do my R&D here. And Canada has great research and development credits for tech startup companies, especially here in Quebec.
Interesting. So most of our listeners are new entrepreneurs or aspiring entrepreneurs. And what I like to relate to them is how everyone got their start, or when they realized they were an entrepreneur. How did you get your start as an entrepreneur?
Honestly, I was really scared. And the thing that kind of frightened me the most is going to sound so stupid. It's actually changing my title on LinkedIn. That scared me the most, because then you were telling everyone from the corporate world that you used to come from that you are now relying on just you, like you're kind of like, I'm giving up this parachute situation. And once you become an entrepreneur, you admit that you are one, you'll never go back. You know what I mean? You'll never have the same, I'll be able to work somewhere else, I'll be able to work for someone else and kind of thing ever again, because your mentality completely changes. And I've learned more as an entrepreneur in the last several years than I have for, all of school and all of my career and everything else, because you do rely on yourself so much. So as I'm gaining these new skills internally, that's kind of when I have felt the confidence of entrepreneurship more and more and more. I know that I'm very resourceful, very adaptable, and so much faster at getting things done than when I was in corporate or given projects or anything else. Because when you give people kind of like an end result and a vision, which is what entrepreneurs do, they have their end vision. They have to find out how to get there. That's kind of where your innovation process comes in and creativity kicks in, But that journey was both a little bit frightening for me internally, but also helped me grow a tremendous amount that I'm so happy with right now.
Well, that's excellent. Now you mentioned you were from the corporate world. What aspect of the corporate world were you from?
So I did online marketing because and advertising. So when I was first starting out, that's kind of where a lot of the businesses were and a lot of the jobs were. And so I was working at Ogilvy & Mathers, a big corporation, which is one of the biggest advertising companies in the world. WebMD, huge in the States. And it's also available in Canada, but we also have free healthcare. So, I had to explain to people what that was all the time.
Yeah, we don't want to talk about healthcare in this country. Not right now. It's a little sore subject, but we don't want to talk about that.
Yes, and so I mostly worked for American companies, as you can see, living in a French-speaking place. But I mostly worked for American companies that were here, and then WebMD closed their offices here and moved everything to the States, and so then I felt like I needed a big change in direction, and so here I am today.
Interesting. It sounds like you do a lot of traveling. Here, I'm going to go off on a little note here. What do you like to do for fun?
I love to work out. I love to be I like to be fit, and I do really love to travel. So by the time I was like 26, that's actually when I moved to the Valley. I've been to about 26 countries.
26 different countries. Which ones were your favorites?
Probably the ones I lived in. So I counted living in as in like 3 months or more, because you had to get an apartment and do regular grocery shopping and stuff. So I lived in Paris for my master's degree. I lived in San Francisco for tech and startup, and I lived in Copenhagen also. That was probably the most confusing because I didn't speak the language. They had very different laws and policies and everything than we do. Like, for example, when you import American goods to Europe, things are more expensive. Like Tropicana is so much more expensive than wine. It sounds crazy, right? But it's so expensive there. So I didn't have any Tropicana when I was living in Paris or Copenhagen because like, why would I? And then on top of that, Copenhagen had things like a sugar tax, which was really interesting. So it kept their citizens healthy because when they imported American goods, not only was it expensive because it was a foreign good, but also counting the grams of sugar and added sugar, which Americans are known for, it adds up to a lot. So if you have a Hershey's chocolate or Tropicana or like your bread, it's just that it's a lot more expensive to get than if you were to get something healthier. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. It sounds like it's much cheaper to live in Canada than it is in Europe.
It is cheaper to live in Canada than it is in Europe. That is true. So, and a lot of our places are very like, they have a good standard of living, you know?
Fantastic. So when you got back to this area, the first thing you do was jump in on the Tropicana?
Oh yeah, so much. Tropicana, peanut butter, all these things that it can't get.
Oh my God. That's interesting. Let's go back to the to some of the thoughts the entrepreneurs are thinking, some of the new entrepreneurs. If you were to give advice to new and aspiring entrepreneurs, what advice would you give?
So when it comes to funding, like the biggest questions are always being the ones that are grilled over and over again. So part of the things that we do, for example, is that we actually went to all these different conferences and pitch competitions and wrote down every single question every single judge has ever asked. So we have a trend of the kinds of things that people usually have pitfalls in. You see what I mean? Mm-hmm. So that gave a huge edge to the startups that were coming out of VenturX. So the ones that we have seen that people tend to have a huge problem with is really being judged on their market. How well do you know your market? So that seems like it's very simple. If you go, okay, well, I'm selling to all the teachers in North America. You know, how many teachers are there? Blah, 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 blah. But it's not really just how many people are there and questioning, because you can get that from census, you can get that from stats, you know, but it's more, how do you know they're going to buy it? How do you know that you're going to be able to make a second sale? Being able to answer those questions is really testing how you're answering the question. They're really looking at your face and looking at your and hearing your answer. But also, it does test your ability to see what kind of secret ingredient you have that maybe no one else has to sell to this market. You know, why do they want this so much? What does it do for them? And how much does it cost you to find all of these teachers in North America, for example? So that is called market acquisition or customer acquisition within your market. And I always find that these were the hardest ones that people had trouble with. The reason that they're asking it at the end of the Q&A section is because they felt you didn't cover it well enough during your presentation.
Interesting. So let's say I am a new entrepreneur and I've got this software product, and you know I don't want to label myself, but let's say I'm techie, but I'm not that knowledgeable on the funding, but I know that's the next step. What do I need before I come to you as far as funding requirements and starting to pitch for those things?
So we mostly work with new entrepreneurs. So that is great. So what we have provided is actually a 2-week free trial. So you can have 100% money back guarantee. When you put in your numbers, they're not exactly where you thought they were going to be. And then you can come back later if you like, you know? So there's a risk-free trial with our platform. So you can see exactly where you're at. You can see exactly what you needed to have done before you came back, whether it's increasing your conversions, whether it's talking to more customers and getting better feedback, whether it's seeing why your existing customers only signed up once and then never talked to you again or never interacted with your product again. So it gives you a very real-time assessment of where that's at. And you know, if you want, we also have account managers that can help set that up for you. So then if you have any questions, you can always ask them on the spot too.
So basically thank God you're going to hold our hands through this process to get us ready to start talking to the investors.
Yeah, every single thing that you do in your step of entrepreneurship is new to you, just like it is for everybody else. Mm-hmm. If you haven't done it before, we don't expect you to know everything. That's the entire point.
That's excellent. That's good to know, because many entrepreneurs, they know that they want funding, but they may not be ready for it. And they may pitch too soon, and all of a sudden it's too premature, and the idea goes to the wayside when everybody says no.
That's exactly right. There are a lot of investors who do love a comeback story because there's so much grit and substance to that story. At the same time, if you're asking for funding that you need but you are not ready for, those are two different situations. And investors have that conversation every day where they have to explain what the difference is between the two.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so it's starting to get a little complicated, but I'm certain that those that are ready for funding are definitely going to talk to you about that concern.
Absolutely.
What, other than your company, other than working out and drinking Tropicana, what are you doing right now?
What am I involved with right now? So I just got nominated for RBC, which is Royal Bank of Canada. I just realized that you're in the States. Yes. So Royal Bank of Canada is one of our biggest banks here. It will be similar to your Chase, for example, or your Wells Fargo. And it's the most valuable brand in Canada. So they nominated me as one of the most influential women in Canada. So I just received this nomination. I was nominated by a female CEO here in Canada, and it was a great, great honor. And so we have a couple of little events that are coming up, and I also have to finish writing my essays for that nomination because I have to explain, my growth plan for the company and things like that. So I am really involved in helping support women in these spaces. I just got offered to be a group moderator and facilitator for the Lonely Entrepreneur, which is a kind of an online support group, but to really help advance women in that way. And yeah, that's a huge trend in entrepreneurship right now. I want to do what I can to meet them, and I want to have a higher percentage of my audience to be women in tech, especially too. I foresee that that's going to be the next big trend. I foresee that there will be a women-led VC firm. Mm-hmm. I foresee that there will be more awards and recognitions and things like that for people and more opportunities. And then I hope that, the next time I go to a women in tech conference, for example, they will all be CEOs, not just some of them, but all of them,
That's excellent.
So these are initiatives that I'm very, very happy with. And of course, I'm so grateful for this nomination.
Well, we definitely hope that you win. So that's that would be fantastic. You bring up a question though. Obviously, mm-hmm. It seems as though you've got a passion for helping women. Mm-hmm. Are the investors also I don't want to say biased. Are they leaning to help women more, or are they looking more at the product and the service that's being offered?
So this is the thing. Not all women who need funding, for example, even go through these traditional routes, and that's kind of the root of the problem. There aren't even enough applications going through. For example, we have a very low percentage of women-led startups at VenturX, and that is very surprising to me. I didn't know it was going to be that low, but it is quite low. And so they don't even apply to put their name in the hat. And that's kind of more the fact that why aren't they getting funding? Well, they only saw 1 out of 100 this month, Wow. So in terms of comparing the product, of course they're going to have a lower chance. There was only 1 out of 100.
Wow.
And so they really needed to have that really increase up and really be having more confidence in what you apply for, and the fact that women do also tend to ask for less money than men. And so their return on investment is different.
Interesting. Why do women ask for less money?
I keep asking them the same thing.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's interesting.
It is, yeah. So like for the same level of product, for example, because we can see it in our stats, a similar stage for a software product that is created by a woman versus a man, she would tend to ask for less money, and not by like a little bit less, like how you would do salary negotiation. It's not just a little bit less, like a different tax bracket. It's a lot less for the same thing.
Wonder where the bashfulness is coming in.
I don't know, but that's the part that that's the part of the problem that I think is the biggest part, is that when it comes to awareness and it comes to actually putting yourself out there, grabbing opportunities, that's where I wanted the encouragement to come. That's where I think that the trend is really going to kick in, not just at the very end when it's saying yes or no, right? Because you didn't have enough candidates to start with.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting. So, speaking towards the female entrepreneur,
mm-hmm.
and being a female yourself, what advice would you give them? Because it sounds like they're not even coming. A lot of them aren't even coming to the table to you.
Yeah.
They're just, whatever the reason may be, whether they're scared or fear, or it's just not going to happen, or they're going other routes. What advice might you give them as this situation?
So I had this great conversation because with one of my mentors, who's my tech mentor here, and he has mentored people for 30 years. He's just been in the tech industry for a really long time. And he always said the same thing to me. He always told me the same story, which was that if a female tech developer, she gave you her code and it wasn't perfect, she would tend to give you nothing. She would just erase everything.
Wow.
And say that she couldn't do it. So she would actually get 0%. Whereas the same thing for the same age, same experience of a young male developer, he would give you all these things riddled with mistakes, right?
Mm-hmm.
But he would know that you would help him fix all of these mistakes, and that's fine. And so women tend to not apply for things, and the same thing with jobs as well, if they didn't hit 100% of the qualifications. Whereas for a man, if he hit something like 60 or 70%, he'd be like, this is the right job for me. I can figure out the rest. And so for me, I didn't have that same kind of mentality. Like I applied when I was in my 20s, I applied for all of these UN jobs for the UN, and I don't speak any African languages. It turns out that it was a strong requirement.
Oh my God.
I actually applied for like 25 jobs, and they're like, oh yes, we can send you to Cameroon and Uganda. I'm like, yes. And it didn't pass. I wasn't close.
Yeah, I guess speaking another language, the language that you're asking for, the country would help a little bit.
I thought it was very optional.
Yeah, no, that's not how that works. You would be good in politics. You would be good in politics.
Yeah, and I think that to them, I would say that one of the best advice that I've ever heard of was that you can ask for anything that you want, and the worst thing that's going to happen to you is that somebody's going to say no, and it's not so bad.
That is true. That is definitely true. Well, wow, we are definitely learning a lot. So, other than investors that are looking to obviously support a product or invest in a product, are there any other funding areas that you also consult in or offer advice in to the entrepreneurs?
So for the last 6 years or so, I was on the side, outside of my corporate job. I was also writing business plans for grants and tax subsidies and things like that. Things that I think a lot of people don't know about and don't take advantage of, especially the government-funded ones, not just the privately funded grants. Because a grant is great. It's money you don't have to pay back. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And tax subsidies are also great because then you're able to get money back, but it just takes a little bit longer. Mm-hmm. However, it allows you to hire higher skilled people, which means that you're going to have your product built faster. And isn't that always a good thing? Mm-hmm. And so all of these different opportunities are really scattered everywhere. So there are a couple of sites that we partner up with, and I think that they are fantastic. So one of them is Fundica, so Fundica. So that I believe is a Canadian one. They also have this amazing competition that I go to every year. It's called the Road Show, and you pitch for like $500,000 or $1 million if you win the pitch. Mm. Which is great, right? Yeah. And you have a list of VCs that are sitting at the table ready to question and grill you after you do a pitch like on the stage in front of hundreds of people.
Do they tear you apart like Shark Tank?
Yes, exactly. It's exactly like that.
Oh, I would be afraid to do that.
Yeah, they don't give you like a timed answer, like you have to give me an answer right now. You can take forever to sweat on the stage, so they'll give you that.
Oh, thank you very much. I'm right up there by myself.
Exactly. Yeah, so they have a whole list of different grants and things like that. The other thing to look into is Shred credits, which is great for research and development. And there are a lot of Shred consulting agencies. And this is the key thing, that it's kind of like having an HR agency on your side. You hire them, and it's mostly free to hire them. They get a percentage of what you've earned. That's it. So it costs you nothing. It costs you like a couple of hours of your time to explain your business and things like that, which you would be doing anyway, because entrepreneurs never stop talking about their business. And they help you apply for all of these things, right? And they get a percentage of it. Usually some will charge you up front, but I don't think the fee is very, very high. And especially if you have several employees that are working on the product, it's totally worth it. So those are the kinds of areas that I would look into. And you would qualify for them at different stages. So what I would do is that when I know that the next competition or the next thing is opening up only in April, I would put a reminder in my Google Calendar for the end of March and look back into it then, because I know that, by then I would be ready. I would have my, different write-ups, media kit, all these things. These are all things that you should have anyway, because you are always reusing the same creatives, the same blog posts, the same, bios and things like that. So you would have all of these things ready for that time. So put it in your calendar of whenever that is. Go look it up today. And sometimes they'll even give you like 12 months in advance notice of when the next deadline is going to be anyway, for like 2019, 2020.
Interesting. Sid, it definitely appears that you and your staff are very knowledgeable as far as funding and what entrepreneurs need to get to that next stage. How does our audience get a hold of you if they've got questions regarding funding, and who should contact you?
Oh, that's great. So usually we talk to the founder, the CEO, because we have to get all of their business metrics in place and ask them questions about their business. The best ways to get in touch with us is from our website. There is a contact us form. So send us a form with your email and your information and your questions, and we will get back to you within 2 days. The other ways is, of course, to contact us on social media. And so I will send you over all of our social media links so you can touch base with us there if that's your preference.
That won't be a problem. We'll go ahead and put that in our show notes so they'll be able to be able to contact you, because it sounds like the funding world can be quite complicated, and having someone in like yourself and your staff along the route can definitely be of great benefit to people. So we greatly appreciate you being on the show today. I don't want to keep you from your Tropicana, because we understand it's been a little bit of a challenge throughout life. But is there anything else you'd like to share with us before we say goodbye?
I hope that no matter where you guys are going in your journey, that you stick with it. The end product may not look exactly like how you imagined it, but your end mission, your vision of what you wanted to do and how you wanted to provide service to the world will always be fulfilled. So don't get disheartened if your product doesn't end up looking like your vision, because it will all come together. And I hope that everyone stays with that.
Well, we greatly appreciate that. That sounds like wonderful advice. Thank you so much. We greatly appreciate you spending the time with us today. Again, check our show notes. That'll tell you how to get a hold of Sydney if you've got questions regarding funding. Again, we want to thank you for being on the show today. And we look forward to hearing more from you, and also wishing you good luck on your nomination with the RBC.
Thank you so much.
Not a problem.
We want to thank Sydney for being a guest on the show today. If you are an entrepreneur, especially in the tech field, and you have questions or you're ready to go to the next stage, you can reach Sydney and talk to her directly and ask her your questions, especially when it comes to funding. You can reach her on YouTube. You can get more of Sydney on YouTube at Entrepreneur Journey Vlog. That's Entrepreneurial Journey Vlog. At Twitter at VenturX Team. At VenturX Team. LinkedIn, you can also find her at VenturX. That's VenturX at LinkedIn. And then you can also like her on Facebook. I'll have those links on the show notes. But again, we want to thank her for being a guest on the show and for sharing all of her knowledge. We hope you have a great day, and we look forward to talking to you next time. Thanks for listening. If you're not subscribed to the show, please do. It would mean the world to us. It helps us climb the rankings. Now, if you go to iTunes and give us a 5-star rating, we'll automatically enter you into our contest where you get a chance to win an iPad or one-on-one coaching. This will go on for the first few months of the year, so we're going to be giving away iPads and one-on-one coaching as our way to say thank you for listening to the show. Now, you can visit us at BYOB Peptalk, that's BYOBPeptalk.com, for further instructions on how to leave a rating, a 5-star rating with iTunes. So the biggest compliment you can pay us, or you can pay me, is by sharing the show with someone that you think that could benefit from it. So please do. We greatly appreciate that. If you have a question, please feel free to leave it for us, and we'll see if we can answer it on the show. In the meantime, we hope you have a great day.